Have you been looking for a way to stay focused on your goals and grow your MSP? Accountability groups from RocketMSP can help. We offer weekly accountability sessions that meet online with a group of your peers. Your success begins with accountability. Go to www.rocketmsp.io to join your accountability group today. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another installment of MSP Webinars. I'm Steve Taylor, your host. Today, we are joined by Rob Reynolds, the creator and founder of Chocolatey. Now, some of you guys have probably heard of Chocolatey. I feel like if you guys have heard of one, you've heard of the other. There's another cool tool out there called Ninite. Personally, I'm a Ninite user. No offense, Rob. But that one makes sense to me. So, so my hope is that you'll be able to convert me and everyone else watching over to Chocolatey, and my understanding is there's like a free version and there's paid versions, and then of the paid versions, it's like there's the MSP edition, but then there's some other edition, which you would need this other one with it in order to be able to make your own installations. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just am misunderstanding the website, but I'm hoping that you can kind of dive into all of that for us today. But without further ado, we're going to pass it over to Rob and let him kind of introduce the product, give us a demo, and then we'll be able to ask him a bazillion questions. Okay, guys? Thanks.
All right, let me know when you can see my screen there, and then we'll get started for everybody here. So bringing up that now.
Looks good.
Go, Steve. Fantastic. Okay. All right. So this is what I normally look like. This was me at Halloween. Anyway, we're going to talk about common sense software management. My name is Rob, and get this thing to work with. There it goes. And I am the creator and founder of Chocolatey. I have been working in infrastructure automation and software management for quite a long time, and also in the Microsoft community, MVP for I think 2 different areas. I've been there for a little while, but kind of a play on the whole Chocolatey thing here, dressing up like good old Willy Wonka for Halloween. And so,
which I want to say that's a very fitting costume for you.
It is. My 5-year-old had never seen me shaved before, so actually I shaved the goatee and shaved up the sideburns to do that. And she thought it was cool, the costume. She was ready to have the goatee back. So, first thing that a lot of people wonder, when we're working with Chocolatey is there going to be chocolate? Unfortunately, on the webinar, we're not going to have any of that. It's more about the automation of Windows, right? And so it comes down a lot of times when folks are looking at Chocolatey, and I'm going to sort of gear this into, comparison to Chocolatey and Ninite, but also just other platforms as well. And so when you are looking at Windows boxes, we could say pretty honestly that we never install Windows on a box and then do nothing else, right? We typically configure some things for it to be used for. We also install software, right? And so there is a lot of software that tends to go on these boxes. And when we come back into that management of those boxes over time, a lot of that is about making sure that that software does get upgraded. Lots of different installer formats out there in the wild. We have zips and archives, and you might also have internal software you're deploying. But one of the things about software installers, they're really messy. And when it comes to those internal, those zips and all those different types of installers, traditionally you're deploying them all in different ways. What Chocolatey does is it becomes more of a universal format. We'll talk about that in a minute, right? And so coming back to that why a little bit closer, you already do deploy software, right? You do it in different ways. You could be using tools out there like LabTech or I forget all of them. There's so many of them. that they already can help manage that deployment of software, and you might have some sort of plugin that works with each of them and helps manage that. But coming back to the management of that software, you also have you might deploy that stuff through install.bats. You might run installers. You might also work creating PowerShell scripts to do those deployments and getting them to run remotely, right? And if you do use SCCM, or you have used SCCM in the past, this is going to look pretty familiar as well. And so what we typically see when people are using Chocolatey is they are starting to see it really reduce the amount of work that they have to do. When you have other things out there like Night, a lot of times what you get support for is use some of those common applications. But as you want to have more things that you might want to support, there's not really anything you can do outside of what Night offers. And so that's where we see folks come in to look at something like Chocolatey because it does offer quite a bit more. Right? This comes back to Jeffrey Snover from Microsoft mentioning folks should look towards more of this automated approach, right? And so when we start talking about really why Chocolatey, a lot of it comes into reporting features, the fact that it is offline and secure. By default, it comes hooked up to a community repository, and that community repository has a lot of packages. We're going to talk about that in a minute. However, most of the time, folks are looking for something a little bit more secure, right? So they want to a little more secure, a little bit more reliability with it. And so they're looking to either set up their own internal repositories to use with Chocolatey, or are looking for other options that are there. Right? Because Chocolatey uses PowerShell, that makes it extremely flexible. You can work with managing software that goes into programs and features, but you can work with a lot more, right? So if you're working with a tool like Night, a lot of times you'll get it to manage the installation or upgrade of that software, but maybe that software doesn't have switches or other things that can support being able to, maybe that didn't put something on the path and you want to put that on the path. So you would have to write a custom script to do that. You could drop all of that into your Chocolatey package. You could manage files in there, put registry settings in, work with deficiencies inside of those installers. And you could also do more. So if you have those zip archives that you just want to drop onto a machine, you can do that. If you want to run scripts, you can do that with Chocolatey packages as well. Everything becomes a first-class citizen. Right? And we've been doing this now for 7 years, right? And just turned 7 about a week ago. So happy birthday. And so stepping back, when we're asking, well, what is Chocolatey, right? So it is that software management aspect, and it is about these packages or these new packages. And those are just fancy zip files. We could actually rename them to a zip, open them up and see what they're doing. And what a lot of it's doing is software deployment, right? So it's taking MSIs, executable installers, and other things and figuring and wrapping that all up into one little package that knows how to manage getting that particular piece of software installed and possibly configured completely silently, right? So you don't have to worry about those aspects. You can take those little independent software deployment artifacts or Chocolatey packages, and you can use them, with tools like LabTech, with tools like SCCM. And so we like to say with those Chocolatey packages, you write it one time, and then you can deploy it everywhere with everything, right? So when we say everywhere, we mean Windows Server 2003 and up, Windows 7 and up, and you can deploy into Server Core, and you can deploy to the cloud. Chocolatey supports all of that. We kind of covered a little bit of this already, but yeah, it does easily manage out that entire software lifecycle for us. Because we are working with PowerShell, it really makes things quite a bit easier, especially with a lot of the built-in functions that Chocolatey comes with. It's got a lot of business-friendly features, right? So it is decentralized. Some folks want to look at what's on chocolatey.org and the packages that are there and think that's the end-all be-all of Chocolatey. And so when we start talking about how organizations might use Chocolatey, we talk about that community repository is the tip of the iceberg, right? And so if you look at the number of packages that are there, there's about 5,700. That is about 5% of the packages in existence. You'll never see the others, right? Because Those are all below the iceberg or being used in organizations. They have their own internal repositories, and there are many, many thousands of packages larger, right, with some of these organizations themselves versus what you see on that community repository. Inside of organizations as well, you see a lot more with reliability, mostly because it doesn't fall into the same issues that you get with a public repository, like that community repository, right? Now we've had our community repository up for 6.5 years now. Went up in September of 2011. Every single version of packages that go up, so there's about 5,700 packages, and there's 46,000 versions of those, right? Every single version that gets pushed up by somebody, right? They push that up, it gets submitted, and then it goes through a rigorous moderation review process where it gets checked for quality and consistency. It gets checked to be sure that it can install properly. It also gets checked against VirusTotal. So it takes all of those binaries that that package represents, and it pushes them off to be checked by 60 to 70 antivirus scanners. Chocolatey is one of the biggest submitters of Windows software up to VirusTotal. The interesting thing is, at the end of all of that, there's still a human that comes along, which are our moderators. There's very few of them. They're trusted members of the community that do those final checks. And so they want to get that approval. And once they have approved it, right, if everything is good to go, then that's the only time that we bump that number, right? So then that's when that version becomes available for folks to actually install. And so when there are security findings and other things, that process of getting a new version that's addressing a CVE can be done within an hour and a half. So it sounds like a long process, but it can be done very, very quickly. One of the things that we do mention, though, when it comes to that community repository, we want organizations to have a fully reliable experience with Chocolatey, one that they can trust, one that they can control, and one that don't have to worry about security at all, right? And so what we recommend is not to use that community repository because of those distribution rights. With the distribution rights and copyright law that happens on a public site, what it means is those packages don't always get to contain the software they represent. They have to reach out at runtime to pull it from those official locations. And the internet can be kind of finicky, right? We want every time you run your installs, your upgrades for organizations, not to be using a lot of bandwidth for you, right? Keeping that bandwidth usage down, but also we want to make sure that it's reliable, right, and repeatable. So each time you run it, you're guaranteed that it's going to work for things that are within its control. Right, so Chocolatey has some sweet features. There is that open source side. We call that very strictly about package management. And so it doesn't do much else than that, but it does work well in organizational uses. With MSP editions, with what we call Chocolatey for Business, which is the end-all be-all, that has pretty much every feature that we have on the SKU. Those are more of a complete software management experience out of the box, right? And so there's more things in there for adding reliability. With the MSP edition and use of that community repository, we're actually making that a little bit more reliable because we have a private CDN where that CDN caches those downloads, and instead of going out to those remote sites, it's pulling it directly from there. And so what you're seeing is we have a lot more with system integration. We are adding endpoint management, and that's only going into Chocolatey for Business for now, but we'll talk about a little bit of that once we get to a roadmap. We're also seeing a lot more visual interfaces with Chocolatey and a lot of features that are geared specifically for organizations. And so this is a pretty familiar interface for folks that have used Chocolatey in the past. Chocolatey is 7 years, mostly being used from the command line. And some people tend to like that, but there's also a graphical interface that is called Chocolatey GUI. It's been around for a while. Our recent edition versions have just added the tile-based view of those things that folks could install. And this is great for desktop users, where you might give folks the ability to come in and manage their own software. And so there's nothing that precludes an MSP from picking up that Chocolatey for Business edition, setting up self-service management, so those non-administrative desktop users would be able to go ahead and install and upgrade software without necessarily having to file a ticket or anything like that. And so pretty dynamic there. Another thing about Chocolatey, when it comes to managing packages that manage installers, right? So those you're going to see a lot of packages like that where Chocolatey installs the package, and the package would install some software into programs and features. Those packages, we call those installer packages. There's a lot of them out there. But 9 times out of 10, when Chocolatey installs one of those, it doesn't need an uninstall script to remove that software. Chocolatey already knows how. And did mention it integrates with everything. So there's a really tight integration in the DevOps area, mostly because tools like Puppet, Chef, PowerShell, DSC, SaltStack, Ansible allow you to work with Chocolatey in the dialect that they have, right? So they have their own languages, and they integrate tightly with Chocolatey features. When it comes to SCCM or RMM, there's RMM, anything that can run scripts. Sometimes it's a bit more of a naive integration in that you use those tools to actually direct Chocolatey to do things through scripting to that command line interface. What there is out there, I think in Lab Tech, there is a plugin, and it's for Chocolatey. It's actually written by a different company, and they, I don't think it's plugins for Lab Tech. Might be their name now. They had a different name before. So I'm trying to think of what that was. Squidworks, right? But I think it's plugins for Lab Tech now. They might even be plugins for Connect. I'm not sure. They work on that plugin, and they work with us on that a bit, and that's been around for a while, and it's a pretty good tool to add in to ConnectWise, automate, and so definitely recommended when you're looking in that area. And we definitely have folks that pick that up, and then they pick up the MSP edition of Chocolatey for a little bit more reliability. So that's definitely there. All right, so kind of stepping into reporting and auditing, very important, especially as you start to see things like GDPR regulations and other things. We're being able to see what's installed and be in compliance with those types of things. And so one of the most important things to understand about Chocolatey, again, because it's not just managing installers, it is much more comprehensive, right? Because it's seeing things that you would have installed like sysinternals type tools or other things that you would have brought in through Chocolatey, and you get a nice report on those things as well. And it's really good to have that because you get an awareness. The reason you need that awareness is, guess what? Those things have security findings too. It's not just those things that get installed into programs and features. Chocolatey is going to bring you that awareness, right? And that's very, very important for a lot of organizations, is getting that complete view of their systems. Now, in Chocolatey for Business, we also have an auditing feature that we can actually see who installed that software, when it was installed, and what's the history of that for that particular package. Chocolatey has very detailed logging. So one of the things we just added all the way back at open source was actually a reflection on the error exit codes that actually give people actionable information. So when you get a 1603 error from an MSI and you're kind of perplexed in what that means, typically that's a generic error for MSIs, and you actually have to inspect the MSI log. Our error message that comes back will actually tell you that you need to go inspect the MSI log, look for return value 3, and just look right above that a few lines, and that should point you to what the error was. Now, 9 times out of 10 is probably a pending reboot that needs to happen before it'll let that MSI install, but lots of really good information there that relates to the big installers and their exit codes. Another thing that Chocolatey offers is being able to see what's out of date. So when you are working with organizations, you can pull reports on this outdated to see what's out of date on their systems, right? And that is, if you're waiting for a maintenance window to come up, you're going to get an idea about how long that's going to take when you're going to upgrade all that stuff with Chocolatey. A really important note that you're seeing here is that with that awareness, you might be able to work with that organization to make better decisions about when you need that maintenance window. Really interesting thing, you'll see in that very first item, it says it's an SSH server. It's 2 major versions out of date. Now, if I saw that, I would recommend we take that down immediately and correct that issue, because that is way out of date, and there are probably a ton of security issues that go with that. I would not have had that awareness had I not had a report that I could look at that would give me that information. Now, I'll go back to these. So all of these reports are run locally on those machines. What typically folks that are doing, that are using open source, are using the MSP edition, is they're going to be aggregating that information text-based into a location and then pulling that into whatever systems they might be using for that reporting so that they can then do more of the querying across systems. One of the things that we're pulling up soon is a tool that we're going to be releasing on the business end that's called, or Chocolatey for business end, called Chocolatey Central Management, where it will aggregate all these reports into one location. We're actually shipping betas to our select customers of ours to see that aspect very soon. And so we're starting to work on getting the packaging ready so we can get something out to them. And so we look at a package repository that we would have, because typically you're going to want to have your own, because not only do you see maybe packages you could use on that community repository, but you're going to have your own other software that you're going to bring into the mix as well. Now, the options out there, Artifactory Pro, Nexus, ProGet, Chocolatey Server, the big options we see folks using. Now, MyGet is the only hosted solution in this list. Now, that's what I think Visual Studio Team services endpoints are also hosted. But when we talk about that, we're really talking about TFS as well. What we see a lot of MSPs use is Sonatype Nexus. The reason we see that is Sonatype Nexus has a free edition that does work with Chocolatey and NuGet type repositories. ProGet does as well, I believe. And so those are our two options. The reason that we recommend either Artifactory, Nexus, or ProGet a lot of times is it's an on-prem solution, and it can support not just one repository. When you're working with multiple customers, you need to have easy management of multiple repositories, and you get that through their interfaces. So you get that one install, you get multiple Chocolatey and NuGet type repositories, and you can move packages through it. So typically with an MSP, what we see is they set up one base repository that applies to maybe all their customers, and then they have a repository, at least one repository per customer. And repositories is where you manage that security. That's the end all of where the security level happens. So it's not a per package security, it's packaged at that repository level. And so being able to do that there allows for very easy customizations per different customer, but maybe have even like the same package name as part of that customization. So pretty comprehensive ability.
So Rob, I want to interject a few questions real quick.
Go for it.
Does Chocolatey allow for upgrades or uninstalls of existing installed software, or only things that Chocolatey's installed itself?
That is a great question. And so when you are looking to have Chocolatey take over something and it's not yet managing it, if that package you're getting ready to install is a newer version than what's installed, you can simply do Choco install or Choco upgrade, whatever that is, and it'll take over that existing installation. Now, if you're looking for a bit more comprehensive, where I already have this stuff and I just want Chocolatey to take over everything very easily, we're going to talk about something that does that will eventually make it down to the MSP edition in a few minutes. The other side of that is I want Chocolatey to be able to uninstall things that it is not managing. I'm not sure if that's an MSP edition. It might be, but it's definitely in the business edition, where I can say Choco uninstall from programs and features, and then give it an indication of what that ID is as it's seen in the display name in programs and features with a wildcard. I could do the wildcard if I need that. And that's kind of a way to blacklist some things out. So yeah, all of those things are achievable. And even if you are trying to install the same version, then it comes down to that software installer and whether it would allow that or not. Sometimes you are able to see it do that, and sometimes it's not able to. It's just, sometimes it's software dependent. And that's the best I could give on that. It's just because, in the world of Windows, the wild world of Windows, software installers are a special snowflake. Each of them is different.
Can we use Chocolatey to install programs into the standard location for the program, which might be, program files x86, or is it going to go into program data /Chocolatey?
So that's a great question that leads right into this next part. So when Chocolatey manages packages, and packages manage software, a Chocolatey package is that NUPKG file, right? That goes into program data Chocolatey into a lib location. The reason that we track a different registry than programs and features is exactly that. Chocolatey treats everything as a first-class citizen. So no matter what that package manages, it's a first-class citizen as everything else. And so Chocolatey does need a client installed, so it is able to track those zips and other things that are managed through Chocolatey as well. Now, those software installers, right, and the software that they represent, that goes to the standard location. And so what Chocolatey is doing when it's working with installer packages is typically doing what you would do if you were doing a silent installation or a silent deployment or unattended deployment. It's no different than that. It's not trying to do anything special in that regard. Now, typically it already has a lot of good things that really speed up the process of figuring that out. And so that's where you see a lot of that Chocolatey goodness and being able to manage that upgrade and uninstall quite easily. But being able to take that to the next level, like I said, if that installer doesn't put something on the path, there is a function in Chocolatey you can use to make sure that that happens. And not the installer, but the actual software when it goes into program files, right? Now, these new packages, these NUPKG files, they are just fancy zip files. They know about versioning and dependencies, and typically you're going to see PowerShell in there. So if you were to extract out one of those, you could actually see metadata in a new spec file, PowerShell in there a lot of times, and then you're also going to see runtime binaries and native installers. Typically, especially internally, you'll see those down in packages. When it comes to creating packages, one of the things that we have open source is Choco New, and this allows you to create packages. So going back to your question, Steve, it doesn't cost anything to create packages. It does not cost anything to host your own internal packages.
Nice.
So, as I said earlier, Nexus is free. ProGet has a free edition. Chocolatey Server is free, open source even. And when it comes to creating your own packages, we have what we call Choco New, and that's going to generate out of a default template packaging. It's going to have about 80% of the work done. So it's just up to you to figure out that additional 20% to figure out how to get that piece of software installed or get that zip unpacked and available in the place that you need it, right? And any additional configuration you might want to do. And so one of the things that we heard from a lot of organizations is that, when I'm creating my own packages, it does have a bit of a ramp up period. And if there was a way that we could actually speed that up, that would be very beneficial. And so one of the things we brought to the business edition is Package Builder. This is where the confusion that some people get, and you don't need Package Builder to create packages. Package Builder is like creating packages on steroids, right? It gives you the option to right-click on an installer, right-click on an MSI, and it can you can choose to create, bring up the Package Builder UI that you see here, or go ahead and generate that package. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a fully unattended software deployment in 5 seconds. Now, to be honest, there's really nothing that can get you a software deployment faster than that. This is the fastest thing that's out there. And what it's going to say, it's going to look at that installer. It's going to figure out everything that's necessary for installing it silently, get it all wrapped up for you, and get it all figured out, right? And so you can also, because it's scriptable, you can point this to a whole archive of all your installers, and you can go through there and very quickly generate these packages. Now, 70% of the software installers out there are fully automatable, right? And Chocolatey is going to be able to get them all the way. There are some out there that don't fall into the 21 formats that Chocolatey knows how to automate, or they fall into, they may not be a very good installer, and so there is that aspect as well. Or it's like Office or Visual Studio. What Chocolatey does when it's working with those is it gets everything arranged, and it actually creates a to-do list that gives you instructions on what you need to do to finish off getting that package ready to go, right? And so with Office, with Visual Studio, typically those need an XML file. Unfortunately, Chocolatey is not going to generate that for you. But it'll get everything arranged, and then you'll just have to add that in. Another great tool, this does say C for B, didn't get updated, I guess, beforehand, but this is also available in MSP Edition. And We brought this down quite a few months ago. What this allows us to do is say, hey, you know what? There are packages on the community repository I want to reuse. I want to make sure they're reliable. I want to make sure they're offline and don't use up a lot of bandwidth with my customers. So I want to bring them internal to my repository, and still kind of build on that schedule of just letting whoever it is that I've watched out there that created this package, let them manage that schedule for when it gets updated. Typically, the most popular Chocolatey packages will get updated within 6 hours of the software getting updated. There's a tool called AU. AU is automatic update. Auto package is a Mac OS type tool that it works with, I believe, Monkey. It's very similar, but it's more for Macs. But ours is called automatic package updater, and that particular one is open source, so it can be used as well when you do want to set up your own packages and then kind of let that manage getting those things moving very quickly. And so that's very beneficial as well. But back to Package Internalizer, what it will do is you can reach out and have it point to some packages, and when it's looking at that package, it's going to pre-download that package. It'll pre-download all the dependencies, and then it goes through each one of those packages, and it finds those external URLs that it might use at runtime, and pre-downloads all that as well, and embeds it right into the package. And then it rewrites the packaging, so it's completely offline using that stuff that's downloaded, and then it hands that to you. Now, you could say, you know what, I don't actually want the binaries in the package, but I do want them over here on this share, and you can do that with that as well. And then rewrite the packaging to point to that as well. So it doesn't have to be inside of the package if you don't want it to be. Now, what you'll see on our feature page, we'll share, and other areas is that a lot of folks will want to automate that process so they can have it completely hands-off. We totally recommend that. What typically they would do is they would set this up with Jenkins or TeamCity or some other type of CI system or a scheduled task. And then they would have it look at packages every once in a while. And when newer versions of those became available, when their script went through it, it would make sure that everything was brought in. And a couple other additional steps they usually do is they go ahead and push that to a test repository and email themselves so they can go in and check and be sure everything's good to go before they push it over to their production repositories, right? Where they're pushing out packages for customers and all that. And on the feature page, there is a couple of resources from some of our customers that are out and big in the community. I've written some articles, and one of them has a GitHub repository. You can actually go look at his script that he runs on a regular basis to make sure that packages are updated. And so how does it work when it comes to package internalizer, all that? And so typically, this is where I like to defer to my friend Shia. All right, so
like magic.
Yeah, so magic. I didn't mention it, but we also have professional packaging services that we offer. When folks don't have the expertise to deal with some of those terrible installers or installers that don't lend themselves well to automation, one of the things that Chocolatey provides is a tool called packaging. I'm sorry, not a tool, but a group, a support team called our packaging. I can't talk this afternoon. I'm sorry. Packaging support services. And so typically folks will get with them to get these things completely automated. And if anybody's interested in looking at something like that, it'd be worth reaching out. Definitely as part of the FAQ or questions later, we can go into that a bit more. So, so Package Synchronizer, it does say Chocolatey for Business, but AutoSync goes into all license editions. So the most important thing to understand about AutoSync is and this comes back to what I was talking about earlier. Chocolatey manages packages, and packages manage software. And they might manage software going into programs and features. They might manage software being unzipped. They might do other things. Chocolatey manages packages. And on the open source, this is especially true. It doesn't do anything other than that. So if you're going to be manipulating the state of that software, you would do it through Chocolatey. And if that doesn't happen, with open source especially, there becomes a bit of a disconnect. And so when you do install software into programs and features through a package with Chocolatey, if someone were to come along and manually uninstall that software directly from programs and features or upgrade it outside of Chocolatey, you now have a disconnect because that package has not changed, right? And so one of the things that we let our licensed editions do is actually, be a little bit more into that software management. So we know when it comes to those installer packages, the state of those packages is really dependent on things, outside of Chocolatey. And so what we do with AutoSync is we actually see that those changes have occurred, and we update the state of the packages to match the actual system state. And so as you're seeing in the image here, this image is actually a little older, it says it's removing the 1Password package because the 1Password software is uninstalled outside of Chocolatey, right? And so that is our AutoSync. And so how it manages for things that are already installed. Another thing that we have in there is sometimes you already have things that are doing inventory reporting. They're looking at what's in programs and features only, right? And so one of the things with Chocolatey that you can do, I'm not sure if that one's only in Chocolatey for Business or down in MSP, but you could flip a switch and you could actually have Chocolatey start seeing all managed packages as part of what's in programs and features. And it's not just the ones that have installers. So as you're seeing in the image, we have Launchy, there's the underlying native installer. So Chocolatey does not need to create a managed entry for that, but something like sysinternals or other tools like Screen to Get Here or your own internal stuff, you can get Chocolatey to create those entries as well. And so if you have support URLs or links for your customers and you're creating things, you could actually put that into the new spec and it'll show up right there in programs and features. Package Synchronizer. This is the one where we were talking about with that question earlier, is I have software already pre-installed on these machines and I want Chocolatey to actually take over everything. And so that's our ChocoSync command. ChocoSync currently is only in Chocolatey for Business. And the reason it is it uses Package Builder to figure out the names of these packages so they don't necessarily match what you see on the community repository, although there are ways to manage to that. It's not an automatic thing. So what it does is it looks at programs and features. It looks at everything that's in the uninstall registries. It looks for local MSIs if they're available, generates this packaging on the fly, and brings all of that software under Chocolatey management very quickly. And so then you're able to take that packaging code back and then start working with that to work on upgrades and other things. Right? And so one of the nice things that we're looking to do in open source and above is have package indexes. And once we have package indexes, we are going to be introducing a ChocoSync version to the MSP editions and also the professional edition that's able to look back at those sources and see if there's a package that's similar to the name that something like Package Builder would have gotten, right? And if there is, we'll just sync that package in, right? Instead of building a package. And so that's a very highly desired feature. We've been talking about it for a long time, and we'll probably be talking about it for at least most of the rest of this year. Hopefully we'll have it in third or fourth quarter. Now, the big thing there is we want to be sure that we have package indexes implemented first. So we don't want a feature like that to cause undue stress on something like our community repository. We have to make sure that package indexes will keep that down, because package indexes every once in a while will pull those sources you're using, pull all that information locally, so you have an index of that, so it doesn't actually have to reach out the next time that you ask a question. All that information is right there on that system. And so we get the question on how does that work? We'll move right past that. So another thing that we have, of course, is self-service installer. We already talked about that a bit, but when you think of Chocolatey, Chocolatey does not have has a client on a system. It does not have a background service. When you're using something like self-service installer, you do need a background service. And so we have an optional thing called the Chocolatey agent. The nice thing about the Chocolatey agent is it does enable those non-administrative users to be able to install and upgrade software through our self-service. But one of the things we're adding also is the ability to set up maintenance windows and ensuring that software gets upgraded on those systems even when we don't have access to them necessarily. Another thing is that's what's going to hook up to our central management. Another really nice thing that you'll see with Chocolatey is, so this goes back to that whole conversation about Chocolatey packages. They go onto a system, then that software gets installed, and that goes onto the system, the uninstaller, and all of that. But in the Chocolatey in the lib folder, right, what you're going to see is there's new packages in there, and those typically contain everything in them that also gets unpacked into that Chocolatey directory. And so in keeping that space down, one of the tools that we have is called Package Reducer. This automatically will clean that up, ensuring that that new spec or that new package gets deflated. So it removes everything that's unnecessary from there, brings it down to 5K. So that really optimizes Chocolatey and using Chocolatey over time, keeping that space down, keeping those new packages small. Another tool that's in Package Reducer is Choco Optimize. So if you do have an existing system, you can run Choco Optimize to go through all of that and just clean everything up, and it really optimizes and speeds up Chocolatey. So I see a question up there about Choco Upgrade requiring a package name. Choco Upgrade All. That's what you're looking for. So Choco Upgrade All looks at every single one of your packages, resolves to if each one of those has an upgrade, and will upgrade. And oh, it's actually right here, Choco Upgrade All. And so that's our Windows update for all of your third-party and internal software. And so for everything you are managing through Chocolatey, if there is an upgrade, it will make sure that that happens.
So wait, you're saying Choco Upgrade All will do updates to everything that Chocolatey is managing?
Yes. If there's an upgrade.
Now it says Windows Update.
Oh yeah, we just call it the Windows Update for your third-party and internal software. So
okay,
because you got Windows Update that manages Windows updates, and that's there was a time a long time ago where we all thought that was going to be third-party software as well. And I don't know if you recall this. It was back in like the end of Windows 98, maybe into Windows XP days, somewhere in there. And we were like, oh sweet, this is going to happen. It never happened. And so Windows Update never managed more than like drivers and Windows updates and kernel updates themselves, and other Microsoft things. Like I think they put Office and .NET Framework in there, but you never got that third-party stuff, right? And so that was kind of one of those things where you always wondered if how would the Windows ecosystem been different if there was a way for those third-party vendors to have gotten their stuff in there as well, right? So that's why we call Choco Upgrade All Windows Update for all of your third-party software, right, and internal stuff as well. Another couple of things that you'll see in Chocolatey is if you are just packaging up a utility, typically you can drop that command, the executable file right into the package, and do nothing else, right? And Chocolatey will actually shim it up, right? So it's sort of like Symlinks, but better, right? So it's going to put that software into a location that's on the path, so you can actually address it from the command line very easily. Very nice. There's also the concept of package parameters and install arguments, and these things allow us to actually customize functionality at runtime, right? So as you may have a SKU or something you want to pass through a license key, you would use something like package parameters to be able to have that customization. Another really big thing you're going to find in open source is you can bring in your own PowerShell functionality through PowerShell modules and be able to deploy those as Chocolatey extensions. They get loaded up as if they were built into Chocolatey. They have that same deployment and package mechanism. And so you do have the ability to take dependencies on those and make sure that they're updated, right? So it's wonderful for organizations that are using that. All versions, all license editions also have what we call our ubiquitous install directory options. So if we are installing some software, we don't want it to go to the standard location, and we don't want to figure out how to pass that underlying argument to change it. We can pass -- directory in Chocolatey for the 12 types of installers that actually do support that. We'll figure out how to pass it to that native installer for us, right, in the right way. And another thing that we get in there is sometimes we'll want to pass secrets through, package parameter sensitive, and install argument sensitive. We'll make sure that those stay out of the Chocolatey logs. We also have package throttle in all of our licensed editions, where it actually allows you to slow Chocolatey down when you're trying to deploy into low bandwidth environments. On the roadmap as well, we have a Choco deploy. This is going to come to the business edition first, and that is a command line side. We are looking to how we can get that into that MSP edition eventually. And so the reason that goes into that deploy Chocolatey for businesses does require that Chocolatey agent we talked about. And so on the right there, you're seeing the teaser image that we've had out for a little while on our central management, right? So Chocolatey Central Management is a nice place where Chocolatey will be aggregating all of these different reports we were talking about into one location, so we can get a really clear view of the computers and the software and all of that stuff that's on our customer systems, right? And so even though the groups image looks like a people icon, that's actually groups of computers, right? So if you're thinking like groups and collections, that's kind of what that encompasses. So we have reports and the ability to do deployments. Now, in that very first system, that first beta that we'll be shipping out, it's really just having that dashboard and being able to see what software is available on what computers. And we're going to be adding more and more to this over time. Unfortunately, that will probably remain only in Chocolatey for Business. So that's just something to consider. The pricing between the two is, it might be a big hurdle for some, but it does have quite a bit more functionality that comes with it that is pretty beneficial for organizations. We are looking to add Windows Nano support, and that would be down in the open source edition. Although we're trying to figure out if that's been de-emphasized or not. We are looking to go to the .NET Core runtime where we would need to be so that we could support Windows Nano. We are also adding WSA AppX support to Chocolatey. At some point, hopefully, Microsoft will add the ability to do upgrades through their package management or OneGet tool, and so we could have an official Chocolatey provider. Now, package management, for those that don't know, is a package manager for Windows 10 and Windows Server 2016. It does not manage any packages whatsoever. That's package management from or OneGet, which that name is kind of funny in that way. Knowing how it actually works, it manages other package managers, right? And so there are prototypes. There's a prototype for Chocolatey that was built a while back. It doesn't have all the features that you would see inside of Chocolatey. We fixed a lot of security issues with Chocolatey over the last I want to say 2 or 3 years now. And I don't know if those have also been addressed in that particular tool. So there could be some of that. So it's something to keep in mind. There's another one that's also built by Microsoft that addresses the ability to work with your own internal packages, which again, 95% of the packages out there. So a pretty important feature that is also built by Microsoft called Chocolatey Get. That's a much more ready-to-go provider for package management when working with Chocolatey. Package enhancements, we're always working on adding more. So we're definitely going to see a lot of that. One of the big things we're going to see in probably Q2 or Q3 is being able to get some of that validation and seeing some of the consistency and quality for a package when you create it. So at pack time versus pushing that up to the community repository and letting it check for that quality and consistency at that point, right? So seeing it very quickly, getting that feedback for folks that don't necessarily push up to that repository. Right, and so another is GPG signing for traceability on the community side. We're also adding authentic code signing. That's more geared toward organizations and being able to lock down to that. And then we have been researching possible support for other platforms, but we don't have any news in that area yet. So, all right, before I switch over to the demo, say this is you. And this is you on Chocolatey. And always a fun thing there. All right, so let's get into this demo a little bit closer so we can see what's going on here. And so if we were to go to a system here, so this particular system does have Chocolatey installed. I do have the PowerShell tab completion stuff installed for Chocolatey. So I get that tab and context sensitive tab completion. Which is handy because I don't type well. And so when we run Choco new, this is that process of creating package. So we said, hey, I want to create a package for Adobe Reader. I would go ahead and call that. And that's going to create that packaging from that default template. That default template has a lot of interweave documentation. You see there's a lot of stuff that comes with that, just came out of that. And so we're going to pull this up, take a look at it a little closer. What I like people to see, especially when you're looking at newer additions to Chocolatey, is we actually have this to-do list, right? And this particular to-do has a nice decision matrix. So if you are using Chocolatey for internal use, don't do what you see on the community repository. They do that because they have to. We like to see folks embed those binaries. That is the most reliable experience when you're using Chocolatey, to have everything you need inside of that package and no remote resources, right? And so if you were to download from URLs or use a shared location, just make sure it's all internal, right? So you get that full reliability. When we talk about the different package types here that kind of lead you to, yeah, you have installer packages. This is very similar to what you see with 9.9. There's also zip packages, portable packages, configuration packages, and other things as well, right? So lots of different types of things that you can create. And then in filling out how those packages contents, we typically go through that at a pretty high level. But you also have a test environment where you can work inside of a virtual machine to test this packaging you're creating. So you have to worry about those installers messing up a system, right? Because when you're working in that virtual machine, you can just throw that away and recreate it to your heart's desire. We also have a workshop that's online that you can use. This comes in that to do from Choco New, whatever name you want to give it, in Chocolatey 0.10.8 and above, right? And you'll see this workshop goes everything from just general packaging all the way up to advanced techniques when working with things and setting up your own internal server. Now, there is a license and verification file. If you are pushing to the community repository, you need those. If you are not, you can get rid of those very quickly. And misspoke a little bit. If you are embedding binaries into the package and going to the community repository, you need those. Those are verification for the community when they come out and see it, and also for those moderators on feeling comfortable with the checksum of that stuff is matching a checksum of something I could go get for those very security conscious folks, right? That might be using that. There is a new spec. This is where, and you can see very heavily documented, where we have a package-specific set of metadata, a software-specific set of metadata, but we also get what we call our dependency management in here, right? So when you are working with a package manager, one of the really strong points you'll see for software management is being able to manage dependencies in a very easy way, right? So if you could imagine for a second, we know it's not true, but if we said that Adobe actually depended on Java and it needed to be at least version 6 and it had to be less than version 9, you can imagine how complex that might be to specify in other systems, or like say I need this minimum version of this thing, or maybe it was I could have even version 9 but not version 10. I would be able to put that in, and then also exact versions and other ways of doing it. Now, the really important part of this is not necessarily when we're looking at the dependency here, but once we pull that out and start thinking about that, what if Java has dependencies, and those dependencies have dependencies in different ranges of versions and all that? Chocolatey and a true package manager is able to very easily manage that complex type of thing that you do see when you are working with that Windows software ecosystem. Being able to manage that in other things, you kind of have to either externalize it and manage that complex stuff and be able to make sure it's up to date. This is all baked right into that package. Just going to make sure that Java is installed before it. And if Java has things that need to be done beforehand, it kind of works its way back. So it's very, very comprehensive. I did mention, when we're talking about PowerShell modules and bringing in those what we call extension packages, they actually have a convention that they end with .extension, right? So that's going to bring in that functionality that might have extra things that might be really important for us to be able to use inside of the package itself. Also README for creating packages and other things in here as well. Get you over into our documentation. Our documentation is great reference doc. There's a lot of documentation. It's not so great when you're trying to search for things or learn things. We know that. We're trying to work on making that aspect better, right? So that's something you're going to see from us this year as well, making all that documentation a bit better. And then we get into really the heart of that packaging is we have 3 PowerShell scripts. So we have a before modify, an install script, and an uninstall script. So in the before modify, before upgrade, before uninstall, I have the opportunity to shut down processes and services. However, Chocolatey is quite good at handling locking. So typically, you're only going to need this file 2% of the time, right? So you can pretty much get rid of that. Now, when we are working on the uninstall side and we're working with installer packages, again, auto uninstaller is going to handle that for us. Again, 9 times out of 10, And so we don't necessarily need this file, so we could probably delete it. Now, if we do need to be explicit, or we do need this for some reason, we would come in and specify that name of the software as we see it, programs and features. And then are we dealing with an MSI or an EXE uninstaller, right? And if it is MSI, that's all we need, right? It is able to do all the rest of that for us. If it's an executable installer, however, we are going to need to provide those silent arguments to figure that out. Now, that said, there's some other functions that we can also use that Chocolatey has that are available, but this is just strictly PowerShell. So we could remove everything and then write our own script here. And so if, learn to spell, we could, if in the install script, we were copying some files to a location, in the uninstall script, of course, we would do the opposite. We would uninstall that stuff or remove it. Or if we were creating putting something on the path, we would want to remove it from the path as part of that uninstall script. All right, so then the install script, this is where you're going to see a lot of really helpful documentation, really leading organizations and other folks down the right path, right? So when you are building packages, you typically want to be bringing those binaries right into the package. That's the most reliable experience. We call that embedding. If those embedded binaries, they go above, 1 gigabyte or 2 gigabytes, maybe you pull that out to a share, right? Or you might use some internal URLs. Now, you remember I mentioned Nexus, Artifactory, and ProGet. Guess what? They have a place where you can put really big binaries and be able to download them with Chocolatey at runtime. So if you can go get the Chocolatey package from those repositories, they have another repository type called raw repositories or binary repositories. You could also download from them. And so you still get that nice experience where you don't have to have very large packages, but everything is much more reliable. Coming down in here, we have install Chocolatey package, and then there's another way to point folks to use, and that's install Chocolatey install package, right? And so, as far as when the session ends, my assumption was at 30 after, and so that's where I was kind of basing things to.
Yep, I've got tons of questions for you now.
Oh, fantastic! So,
I'm seeing this stuff and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize this was this powerful. But
powerful. Yeah.
I've had a few people send me some private messages. One was a GIF with a deer and headlights.
Yeah. So stepping back a bit on some of that. So I mean, the thing is, Chocolatey is very flexible, very powerful. You can create packages. I won't necessarily go into some of that, but kind of coming out of that deer and headlights a bit, let's say we have something like 1Password we want to get onto systems with Chocolatey for Business. Of course, we get that right-click, create package, creates that fully unattended software deployment for us, right? And as we look and try to understand exactly what that means, what Chocolatey is doing is it's creating that software deployment as that install script, right? And so it's managing to that installer itself, where it's providing all the silent arguments. It does the same thing with MSIs. And so when we're using something like the MSP edition, what we're doing with that is we'll be pulling up something that's this package builder UI. Now, it's a little bit different in Chocolatey for MSP. You have to actually specify what those silent arguments are. You have to provide all of the information on how to build out that package, but you get that concept of generating. So maybe stepping back just a bit from that point, I'm going to grab this and bring it back. The big thing you want to see when you are creating packages and all that is, okay, so I have this new package. It's going to manage that software. Has that actual software installer in it. And so now I want to do Choco install. Sorry, going back here. If we look in the folder, you can see it's there, right? So Choco install, 1Password minus Y, and then to this location, right? We're going to be picking that up. And so then as we run that, we get that particular piece of software installed for us very quickly. Now, one of the things, and I don't know if we've gotten that updated just yet, is we can actually then push that up to a repository where we would use that internally. So from here is let's go over to the GUIs to bring that. Right, and so as we take a look at what Chocolatey is managing, we have that Chocolatey UI, and that gives us a really nice view of that, all of the different servers that are configured. There's nothing on this particular one yet, but then we could take a look at what's on the Chocolatey repository and pull that and take a look. By default, it flips over to tiles, but this version we have in the demo did not. And so we get that nice tile view. And so you can see some of these say they're out of date. It gives us a really nice view of that. When it comes to setting up things for that internal use, right? And so going back to the fact that we don't recommend that you use the community repository directly. So if you were to say, hey, I actually want to bring Google Chrome in, and I want to get that onto a schedule, right? And so I'd say Chocolate download, and then I would automate this, and I'll show you the scripts for that. Chocolate download Chrome, Google Chrome, because that's the name of it on the community repository, and I want to run it with internalize. And what happens is Chocolatey goes and gets that package, right? And we're going to watch this go. I'm going to try to jump in and show you what's happening here. And so it's going, and let's see if I beat it. And so it's grabbed those MSIs. And so if we go back and actually look at that package on the community repository over here, so I'm going to start here, and we'll search for Google Chrome. Google. It's going to bring me to Google Chrome. I have to click this the first time, but you'll see when I look at the packaging here, this is all that's in there. There's an install script, right? And that install script, so this is a lot of what you see with Chocolatey on the community repository. It actually, at runtime, it has to go out and get those binaries. It does checksuming to be sure that those are what is expected. Everything gets checked against antivirus virus total, right? So coming back to that, let me see what those results are for those things. Now, when I said this one's pretty well good to go because there's nothing, right? So we know this was the one that came from signed verified. This is coming from Google. When we look at the 64-bit one, or maybe this is the non-64-bit one, we kind of get that same thing. So we get a nice comfortableness about what we're working with. So that gives us a little bit of trust. The nice stuff is what got verified here, right? If you look at that checksum that's there, that's V14. Typically, whatever checksum they're using SHA-256. I want to say this is SHA-512. No, I'm wrong. And so there's that V14, right? So that's actually that one for the 64-bit, and then for the non-64-bit, you see that's 95. If that file changes remotely, by default, it may not install. It'll come up and actually error. So you get a little bit more protection when you are using things that you would just otherwise download from the internet. When it comes to internal use, we don't recommend doing any of that at runtime. So when you're working with customers and other things, we want you to take that packaging. If you want to reuse what's here, that's great. Do the internalization so that that package actually contains all the bits, right? So that's what you're seeing here. It's brought in those bits, and it's rewritten this packaging. So if we take a look at this install script, you can see there's where it's trying to download. And when we reload, it's actually using what's available inside, right? It's not reaching out to the internet anymore. So that's pretty important in that I now have a package that I'm going to take and push up to a repository that's internal so that I can install, right? And so if I want to do that now, I would say, okay, I'm going to push this up. And this is, we have a newer version of this, but I would say the source I'm going to is actually on the system. So I'm going to push that up to that. And then I have to give it the API keys. And then I'll go ahead and push that, and it would push that package over to that repository. And you see that this package is 96 meg, right? And so when I come back over here into my UI and head back over to internal server here, do a refresh, I should see Google Chrome sitting there, right? There it is. Right, so then I can actually look at it, see some more information about it. But I know when I install this, that when it gets this package will not go out to the internet whatsoever. Right? So I have that nice internalized version of that package. And so as I take a look at package internalizer to understand how I can automate that process a bit, I come down to the feature page that's over here, and I have package internalizer. And there's different options and switches that kind of go along with it. The biggest thing to gather is outside of all that, it kind of gives you the ability to change things. The defaults that come with it are pretty good. So you'll just want download and then internalize. And there are some articles that are out there that show people how to actually get this stuff set up now. It has a nice font here, but if we come down to like Jenkins, see some of those scripts now. That might be a little bit crazier than just setting up to a scheduled task that looks at Choco outdated. That's what you see in this particular article written by Dan Franciscus. At the very bottom, though, after he explains everything, he points you right to GitHub so you can actually take a look at his script. Now, a lot of organizations kind of just pick up that script and supply it with the right properties. And when a new version of a package comes available, they get it automatically set up when that scheduled task runs. It gets pushed into their internal repository. So it's a hands-off a bit so that you can kind of lean on those community packages that are out there without having to worry whether you're losing out on reliability issues. So I'm not going to try to go into too much more detail because there's a lot of really advanced things that you can do with Chocolatey, and a lot of, yes, I think I might lose more folks on that deer headlights look, but I did want to show you really quickly that when you are saying, okay, well, I'm really interested in Chocolatey, I really want to get something set up internally. If you come over to the docs, when you come into the site, click on docs over here, and then just scroll down until you get to the how-tos. For some reason, we put our how-tos at the very bottom down here. And so at the very bottom of that list is how to set up Chocolatey for internal and organizational use. This is a great guide that a lot of organizations use that really helps them get everything fully set up so that they can get customers and other things. And the most important thing to note is, yes, there are steps, but if you scroll to the bottom of the steps in a lot of these, you have a script, right, that you can run. And this goes through everything we recommend when you do set up Chocolatey on a system, as far as making sure that you have a very long timeout, setting that Choco cache location so that you get really deterministic cleanup by Chocolatey. Those are even at that open source side. So, and it's some other aspects of that as well. So I'm going to step back now because I think, as you mentioned, there's a lot of questions.
No problem. So someone has a Windows app that they sell to schools, like, K-12. Mm-hmm. They usually lack the tech tools or the expertise to deploy the app to hundreds or thousands of endpoints. What would using Chocolatey to allow easy mass deployment look like from a 10,000-foot view?
Right on. So it really depends on what you want to use as that deployment mechanism. Chocolatey itself is a package management type solution. It's typically on the clients. It'll accept those commands from multiple tools. So coming back to, I'm going to switch my share back from this to the desktop so I can go back to that slide. And we'll start from here and just bounce back. So Chocolatey itself, without Choco Deploy, which is coming in without Chocolatey Central Management, doesn't really manage that deployment aspect. It defers that to some other tool, right? And getting back to it, there we go. That could be SCCM. That could be a tool called Box Starter, which we call Configuration Management Lite, that can do deployment to like 10,000 machines. Or any of these other tools could also do that. So if you are kind of working with PowerShell DSC or one of these other things, you could definitely use Chocolatey. For the 10,000-foot view, you're going to have that Chocolatey package. It'll be that software deployment, and you're going to decide how you're going to get it there. And that could be through PowerShell remoting or an RMM tool like the one I mentioned that does Chocolatey and LabTech together. They would then push that out to all those systems. Does that make sense?
I believe we're good there. So someone else said, can this replace a config manager like SCCM?
I hesitate to say yes. So SCCM does provisioning. It manages Windows server update services or managing those Windows updates themselves. It also does that third-party deployment, right? And it has a whole bunch of other things that it can do as well. What you see folks do is they'll actually when that third-party deployment aspect of SCCM is there, they start using Chocolatey packages to manage that stuff better, right? Because SCCM, because it does so many things, right? When you see Chocolatey is hyper-focused on one thing, so it does it very, very, very much better, right? Or quite a bit better. And so they tend to bring Chocolatey in to really make SCCM excel in that aspect, right? Of managing those software deployments. So yeah, it's a tougher question to answer because it really depends on what exactly it is you're trying to get out of something like SCCM and whether Chocolatey could replace that. Configuration managers like the Puppet, Chef, Ansible, and SaltStack, and PowerShell DSC as well. Those are a bit more different because they fall more into what are considered modern automation tools or DevOps type tools. You see those managing things with source control scripts and other things, right? And being able to test out those deployments and other things, right? And so sometimes you'll see folks come in and say, well, we want to get more into that, right? And so what we'll do is we'll actually look at bringing something like Puppet or Chef and Chocolatey in to replace some of that functionality that we were formerly doing with SCCM. They might keep SCCM around for some of the other things that it does, especially with client systems. So it's a tough thing, right? Maybe that was too much of an answer. I don't know.
So I think there's going to be quite a few people watching this that don't even know what Puppet or SaltStack or any of these other things are, because I would say that, and I don't want to intentionally lump people in, and but I would say most of the people watching this are managing 350 or fewer endpoints across all of their clients, and even smaller. There's probably some guys that are doing a lot of break fix that are trying to figure out managed services, or maybe just aren't using their RMM tool correctly to this point. So let's talk to the guy that wants to start doing automation, but doesn't know PowerShell, doesn't understand anything on this current screen. I think that is probably an important thing for us to try and get out of the way first.
Yeah.
So let me try and start, and then you can fill in the blanks or correct me when I'm wrong. So Chocolatey is essentially going to be the package manager, and a package is going to be the software itself. There's the Choco deploy, is that what it's called? Where that can do the actual installation and management of the upgrades and uninstallations and that type of stuff.
To remote machines, yeah.
Remote, okay, yes. But essentially what Chocolatey is going to help us do is take some software, and I'll say some because it'll do like 70% of the software roughly that's available, based on all of the different software installation packages and that type of stuff that are out there, like Install Shield or Windows Installer, and that type of stuff is what you mean right there when you're talking about all the different install packages. So
right. Chocolatey
can look at these install packages and figure out, okay, here's how I install this software silently, assuming that the people that made the software using that install package did it correctly, or what you're going to call correctly.
I would come back on that point right there. When they haven't done it correctly, there are ways to fix that with Chocolatey and other tools that can correct those badly behaved installers, so that you can achieve that kind of automation with Chocolatey with those installers that are craptastic, I guess is a term we like to use sometimes. Not the best installers, kind of troublesome. They don't have fully unattended things, or they have little pop-ups that come up even though you've asked for them to be silent, right? We can correct all of that with Chocolatey and some of the surrounding tools that go with that. There are the free side of that typically comes back to like tools like AutoHotkey or AutoIT, if you remember those fun things. There's also an MSI repackaging solution that can manage that, that is free out there, I think on IT Ninja's website. to ones that are very, very expensive. Now, the one that our team uses is somewhere around $2,500, right? So it's not bad, but it can actually, and I'm sorry, we talk about MSI repackager. I should explain what that means. So when you are dealing with installers that don't lend themselves well to automation, you need to run it fully unattended and in silent, completely silent environments where you may not have interactive access. What you look at that point is a concept called MSI repackaging. And what that means is it's going to take that installer and you're going to run a recorder, and it's going to watch everything that that installer does. And when it's done, it creates an MSI for you. That's MSI repackaging. That MSI can now be deployed completely silently. When you're working with tools like AutoHotkey and AutoIT and some of those, you still need that original installer to be run. And then when those pop-ups occur and those other things, there are scripting inside of those tools is seeing and waiting for those things so that it can actually respond to them to make it unattended, but still in an interactive sense. And so,
okay,
so when Chocolatey is working with installers or any software, really anything that you can do or install when it comes to Windows can become a Chocolatey package, provided that you can use one of those other tools to bring that in, or it's manageable in some way with PowerShell, because Chocolatey uses PowerShell for that automation side.
Gotcha. So when looking at Chocolatey, so we could, in theory, use Chocolatey and get rid of other tools like Ninite or other third-party update solutions that RMM tools might offer, because those are going to update some of the common things like Adobe and Notepad++ and Java and all that other stuff. Like, there's already packages on your repository available for that more common stuff.
I believe everything that you can get from at least the big one, I'm not going to say it, but you can probably find on the community repository.
Okay.
We would say when you are evaluating whether is this a good time to do that or not, understand if you're under if you're grandfathered, where you're getting that at that much cheaper price, you may want to stick with that for that stuff, and then look at Chocolatey open source for all that other stuff you can't address, right?
Gotcha.
With that. Now, if you're not grandfathered, now maybe that's a time to say, okay, well, the pricing is very similar between the two. Could I replace that with Chocolatey? And so I don't want to say that that's maybe the right or wrong choice with something like Ninite, where you have a company that's managing all of that software that they provide. You have a much clearer picture of the security around that. You know that that's provided by them and not a community. So you're not working with a community like you would be with that Chocolatey community repository. You actually have to do a little bit more work to vet those things, prove out the safety and all of that before you would take that to your organizations. That's been a really big gripe for folks that are MSPs that do want a hands-off type of thing. One of the things that we've looked at with Chocolatey is having a repository that's only curated by Chocolatey software, our company, right? So you could get that same level of trust and be able to deploy a similar set of packages that you would see with some of those other services. Now, we haven't set a timeline on that yet. That is something that we definitely want to bring about. And so I would say for folks that are saying, I'm using this other thing, when's the right time might be after we offer that.
Gotcha.
You get that same experience of hands-off management of those upgrades. Right? You don't have to go and worry about making sure that you're getting that next version all packaged up. You're kind of letting somebody else do that for you. And that's where that as we call an SLA, Chocolatey software company offered repository would have that same aspect.
Gotcha. And for those of you that have asked, yes, this is being recorded. It's actually being streamed live right now to YouTube. It'll stay there. So if you're getting information overload, this is going to be available for you to watch again later. Okay. So the difference between Chocolatey and, we'll just say that other tool, I've already named it. The difference between Chocolatey and Ninite is, sure, Chocolatey can do all of the packages that are in Ninite, but then you can take it a step further and you can say, you know what? I want to deploy Office 365 for business
Yes.
and QuickBooks 2018 and manage those with Chocolatey. And you can successfully do that. Now, success is going to be I'm going to say success is going to be, your mileage may vary, because if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to scripting and editing, I saw you had that file where you were editing earliest version and latest version and that type of stuff. That's where you might get hung up, but it is something that you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think is the best way to answer that. And it looks like, yeah, there you go. There's already someone that's added Office 365 in there. Last updated almost a year ago.
Yep, looks like it. So,
now, does that mean that it just doesn't need to be updated anymore because it does its thing, or because they...
I think it's because there's not an updated version installer. I think what they offer is, once you install it, if I recall correctly, Office 365 just upgrades all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of crazy. You don't really get to specify it not to do that. And what you see here is, if you look at this particular package, what it's going to download comes directly from Microsoft. And so that was validated before this particular package was able to go live. So if you come out to the community repository, and if you ever find a package where this tool comes from Microsoft, but then you look and it's like, well, that's not from a Microsoft location, or where Microsoft might be offering it on GitHub.
That's when those red flags go up.
That's when the red flags go way up. Now, they have gone way up for the community moderators way before they were ever visible, right, for you to see them, right? So if you're ever curious, like, well, how does that whole thing work? You can come over here to this moderator queue, and you can actually see that there's a nice conversation that goes back and forth with folks as these packages are being pushed up. And so
that's pretty cool. So even though it's a community repository, the moderation helps it to be a little more secure. And by simply looking at that, what was that section called in there where we can look and see where it's downloading stuff from?
Into the packages.
Okay, so when you look
section.
in the...
Yeah, so in here we have our normal view on how you would normally see it, and then a moderator queue. And so I've come into the moderator queue. You'll see is this package. So this is if you're really wanting to see like these things that aren't live yet, kind of see how that process works, where this thing goes through that automated validation. It failed that because it was doing something it shouldn't have. So the package was actually written incorrectly in a way. So that goes back. Sorry for the person this went out for.
Sorry to just throw you under the bus there. But
there's also, after the validation, there is a testing process that happens. And if you're really interested in that, there's a link. Whenever you look at packages and you see this little guy here on some of these, let's see, that fixed itself. It looks like no. So we've got a little bit of an issue currently on one of these systems. It's usually Web 2. It's on Web 1 right now, where that cache has done something and hasn't been able to catch up. So let me jump to a package really quickly so we can look at like Google Chrome. Again, that's a good one to always go look at. But you see that little green dot? Now this doesn't have a limit, but if you go here, if that dot is red, it means that something may not be passing. And so every once in a while, we have our verifier come in and actually test that these things install properly. It's grabbing a registry snapshot. So it's seeing everything that got installed into the install programs, right? Programs and features. And it's also has a script of things that it was tracking for the files. You actually get that full text of the install, right? So you can get a really detailed view of everything that Chocolatey did if you really want to see it. Coming back over here to this, where it's not a lot of information here, but if we went and actually looked at the logs, even though we don't have a lot of information here, it's going to look a lot like this. All of that stuff is being captured, especially which is great. If I run into issues, I'm able to really dig in and see what happened. But coming back to this other guy here, all of this stuff you don't see once a package gets approved, but it's all still there. And then, of course, this one got pushed back for one reason, but it looks like it's installing a font. So it's going out to Ubuntu to go get that font and bringing that in. And so when we look at community packages, it's important to note that a package could be maintained by the actual vendor, right? So if we look at OS Query, that's from Facebook, allows us to do things. The actual folks that are maintaining this package is Facebook. And so this guy works there on that particular team. He makes sure that this thing does stay updated, right? And so sometimes the package maintainers are also the vendors, right? And when that happens, what you'll see is this concept of a trusted package, meaning that after it passes all that automated stuff, that package can get approved without a human coming in to verify that extra bit of safety, just because we know that the folks that are building that package are the same people that offer the software, right? And so we built kind of that aspect. So yeah, in here, this is where you see where the binaries are embedded, right? So you see this where you can actually go get this and you can verify it against, typically it's against the community somewhere where you would be able to download that from originally.
So this is fantastic. So we've got the ability to look and check the files and verify they're coming from a good source.
Yes.
We've got the ability to check the virus total results, and then we've got the ability to look for a green dot next to the name to verify that it's been moderated or tested when it's green.
It's been tested. So
Okay.
if it's been moderated, that's where you get to see it. If it hasn't been moderated, it falls into that moderation queue until it's hit that point. And sometimes you can get in and you can actually see all the different versions. I don't know if you're not logged in and you're not a moderator, if you're not a package maintainer, whether you'll see the upcoming version or not. I don't think you will. It's just for the folks that are doing that. But also, if you don't trust any of that, what I would say is, okay, so I see sysinternals here. I want to take a look at think faster. Come on. Maybe we'll just stick with this one. So there's a download over here on the left. And so a couple of important things on this left side is if the package is outdated, you have a way to reach out to those maintainers and then work through a process we call the package triage process to make sure that the right folks get added or brought into it that can get that package upgraded. You can also contact those maintainers directly, contact the site admins, right? That's the moderators and folks. And if you're a software vendor, you say, hey, this is my tool. It looks like maybe these folks are doing something on community repository where they're offering my software up and they don't have distribution rights. We kind of walk into that process to figure how that works, right? That's the same thing I'm about to tell you, right? So if I'm, I can also report abuse. So if I see something in here that's does look like it made it through all of those checks and safety balances, right? Safety and balance checks, I can come and report on that as well. So the other thing is being able to download that package, right? So I can go get that package directly and bring that down. It's thinking. So yeah, going back to that software vendor, we're showing them that exact same thing. Go to do the download, actually rename that to a .zip, and you can extract it out and look at it. Right, so you can actually see what that package is doing.
And then with that said, I noticed you mentioned a font earlier. Now, again, because Chocolatey is such a neat and powerful tool, we could, in theory, use Chocolatey to essentially do almost like a copy paste for us, where we want to install 37 new fonts to this computer. We just use Chocolatey to kind of slipstream them into the fonts folder, wherever that is.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what is the difference between Package Builder and Package Builder UI? Is that the one where basically the Package Builder UI is doing more of the work for us?
So, looks like something's not happening up here. Great to happen during a demo, but so Package Builder UI is coming back over here. Not this one. That's even the wrong one. If I was to go call Package Builder, right, I would get a UI. And the package builder UI in Chocolatey for Business has the package builder concept built into it, where it can actually do all of that detection from those installers and everything, and extract all of that, and then build my package completely for me. Package builder UI will bring this this UI to you. Won't have the programs and features tab where you can generate packages based on everything that's installed, but you'll get the new spec and that general side where you can actually specify, here's the things I want to embed into the package. Here I want to bring in these other scripts. Here are the silent arguments for that. And then I flip over here, and it's also required that I provide whatever the ID is going to be. So if that was like Google Chrome, and I can never type that apparently, or whatever I wanted to call that, I would get all of the important bits specified here. Then I could click generate, and that would be very similar to the same experience I get with Choco New Bob, right? Or Bobo in this case. It's going to generate out that it will go ahead and bring some things into it above and beyond this just a straight command line experience. And so then I'm still going in and doing more work to finish off packages.
So the big difference is you're doing the exact same thing, but with the package builder UI, you're doing it all in a central interface, and then it's building out and filling in all the blanks across all the files for you.
Yeah, so if I said the ID here was named Tim, right, and I actually do need to give that something, but what that will do when it generates is it's going to create basically the same thing for me. That'll already be geared to have some of those bits filled out. Right, so it's going to save me a little bit of time as I come back to fill out this aspect, so that install script. Does that answer that question?
I think so, yes. Now, you've mentioned Chocolatey for Business a few times. Obviously, we're all MSPs, so we don't care about Chocolatey for Business, do we?
Sometimes MSPs do. We definitely see MSPs come in. They'll pick up either MSP Edition or Chocolatey for Business, or some folks just want to stick on that open source side, and that's completely fine. You can run a business on Chocolatey open source and the architecture that surrounds that, and never have to worry about a cost that's associated with that, except for the cost of learning, right, and those things. But that's absolutely what we see organizations do. We have a very vibrant community of folks that are out there that are using anything from open source all the way up to Chocolatey for Business. And there are ways of reaching out to the community when you're trying to figure out something. We have what we call it Gitter, but it's like a Slack or an IRC of sorts where you can get in and ask questions, and other folks in the community might have an answer for you. We have mailing lists that are very similar to that as well. All of that stuff are free resources. When you get into our commercial editions, above and beyond that, you get access to our support folks. Our support folks give you that private channel for support, right? And then you get all those features that come inside of those commercial editions as well, that really are geared towards making a lot of the stuff that you're doing quite a bit easier, and taking some of that workload off of you that you would have if you were on the open source side. And that's kind of where we're at. We're always going to have that open source available. It's a Apache 2 license, so it's very, very friendly for organizations.
And have you guys ever considered partnering with one of the RMM tools like Enable or LabTech to build your own integration with their tool, and then offer an MSP or similar MSP product where they can just kind of buy it through the RMM vendor and you get even more exposure and money?
That is a good question. So we have talked to, again, going back to plugins for LabTech. We've talked to, Sean? Is it Sean? Shoot.
We'll call him Sean. It's okay.
He has been great about kind of bringing us into, what is the MSP community? How should we kind of shape some of our offerings around that? Now, of course, we have to push back a little bit because we can't give everything away in the MSP edition. Nobody would buy the business edition, right? But being able to figure out when's the right time to bring some of those things in, and also looking for a little bit more of a pairing, right, to figure out how when you're using their tools, how can that be done in a way that also supports our side as well in some monetary aspect. And so that's about as far as I'll say into that. We have looked into some of that, but not necessarily with the bigger vendors of those tools, like Ninja, RMM, and LabTech, or I guess it's ConnectWise Automate now, and then some of those other tools. But there's a pretty vibrant community of folks out there that are using Chocolatey with LabTech that we know about.
Awesome. And then how does support look for people that pay for Chocolatey?
So when it comes to support, when it comes to the commercial editions, when you have Chocolatey for Business, you have the ability to reach out. I think it's something like 8 cases a month, but a lot of that comes into, I'm struggling on the help side. I can't find documentation. If you're reporting for a feature request or you're reporting a bug, those don't count in those cases. And when it comes to the MSP edition, because we have to really, we've really targeted the MSP folks with a really good price. It's $3 a year per machine. So that's like 25 cents a month. If I'm doing the math right, or 50 cents a month. I want to say it's 25 cents a month per machine. Because we've done that, we had to really kind of reshape our support aspect a bit. You do get, I think, about 8 cases a year where you can ask the questions, where you're struggling on some things. Go above that, we start looking at additional costs. But when we haven't really seen that yet. When folks are asking those questions, typically we're able to easily get you over to the right documentation. Or if you're struggling with something like, I don't understand how to get this repository set up correctly, sometimes, or I'm running into what I think is an issue. A lot of times, some of our folks on the support team will say, okay, well, let's do a screen share. Let's take a look at what you actually have going on to try to figure out what's going on, versus going back and forth in email, because, that's not a good way to have support. All our support stuff starts through email. And so that's how we have that. But a lot of times, just to really speed up that support process, our team will say, okay, well, let's just see what you have, right? So we can understand that better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned the price. The MSP edition is $3 a year per device. And then you said it's 25 cents a month is what it works out to be. So if I want to get 100 licenses, I can just give you guys $25 a month and call it a day?
Yeah, so that's the other thing there. I'm really glad you brought that up, by the way. One of the things that we want to get to is the ability to do that monthly type pricing, where you could go up or down on the month. Unfortunately, because of some of the ways that you would set those licenses and other things, it's really would require a lot of work on your part to make sure those licenses get upgraded every month and all of that. And so we go by annual licensing. So as you're looking here, stick with that. That's a pretty good size. What you see on the business side is, that's $16 a license going down in volume. But when it comes to MSP, 200 licenses.
So I got to buy 200 too.
Well, actually, I think it's 100 now, right? And so,
okay.
If you were to go to one of the links for that, I want to say that no, that's not the right link that goes on to that. So you could buy it through there. You could work if you need to go through a purchase order approval process. You can go through that with us. We have some customers that need that. But if you are curious, what's the difference between Chocolatey for Business and MSP? MSP carries this side. And so every edition, you're going to be able to create packages, host your own repository, even in the free side, right? And then when we get down here, we get package internalizer and MSP as well. Some of the enhanced functionality you're going to find on that license side.
Why is that both a yes and a no?
Because this is Pro/MSP.
Okay.
Features. So
Got it.
It made it easy for us to do it that way. And so our sync command, it does say estimated Q1, but today is pretty much the end of that Q1. So we know that's not likely to happen because we don't have package indexes. And so going back to the incidents annually, that's where that reaching out to support for questions, not for bugs or feature requests, just for questions where you're needing that support through best practices or recommendations and stuff like that. That's where you would hit that case number. Oh, and so that would not be right. But if I come down into the FAQ, lots of information here. But we do go annual, and as you need to add more, you can do that even on a monthly basis. But the trick is with our pricing right now, you can only go down at the end of the year. So if I get down here to it, DevOps, we get into managed service providers. Oh, so then there's a link right here for folks that want to come in. We got to fix that. But yeah, so it looks like the minimum quantity looks to be 100. So if you come in and try to buy like 30, I think it would not let you do that. But yeah, so minimum quantity is 100.
Okay.
It's not bad.
So $300 upfront, and that gets you a year of managing 100 devices. That's really not bad, especially if you consider what pricing is on other tools.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, I'm one of the lucky ones grandfathered in, so my annual expense is $280 for 100 devices. So yours costs a little more. However, yours also has a lot more for functionality. So I see value in that. But regardless, I mean, we can use the open source version. You are cool with people using the free / open source version for businesses, for MSPs. It's a consumer thing only. If you're a business, you have to pay. Like you're actually pretty cool about that. And
we don't have anything in our EULA that mentions anything like that. So sometimes you see things that say, "Oh, yeah, it's free," and then you get into their EULA and it says "except for businesses." Even though, but wait a second, we don't have anything like that. So we have a lot of common sense that comes in our licensing. And so if you say, hey, you know what, I have, so coming right into the FAQ in the licensing section, I have 30 machines that I bring up, and then every once in a while I'll tear down a couple of them and put up new ones. Do I lose out on those couple that I destroyed? And we're like, not really. We just go by what you have for how many deployments of Chocolatey do you have that you're using, right? So as you might remove some customer or add other customers and stuff, you look at what that high number is, whatever that is where you should go for licensing, if that makes sense. So sometimes when you're an MSP, you're going to want to use that package internalizer and then deploy out to customers. Does make a difference when it comes to license counts, but you don't have to put those licensed editions on those other machines. You just have to count them if you deploy out those particular packages there. So yeah, there it is at the license threshold. So we are an on your honor system. We don't have any kind of call home features or anything inside of Chocolatey or Chocolatey for Business. It is a completely anonymous tool. It's open source. You can go look at it for everything except for the commercial stuff. It is open source, so you can go look at it out on GitHub. So
awesome.
You'll find that we have built a lot of common sense into our offering, just as much as we have our tool.
That is very awesome. Rob, thank you so much for doing this. It looks like we've answered everyone's questions. Zach has a comment here. It says PowerShell DSC plus Chocolatey plus literally any RMM that can execute a script equals pretty much the greatest thing ever. So that's coming from a guy who works to automate like everything. So I like that if you can get Zach's seal of approval, you're good, man. So so thank you for doing this, Rob. Real quick, guys, next week we have on the 5th Bitdefender coming on, and then the week after that is just one of the internal roundtables. If anybody's interested in being a part of an MSP roundtable, just shoot me an email, steve@mspwebinars.com. And then the following week, math hurts right now. I want to say it's the 19th. I want to say that's Carver. That feels right to me. Carver feels right to me. Let's go with a strong maybe on that. Nope. I was wrong. I was very wrong. Next week is MSP converting break fix to managed services. Then the 19th is Bitdefender. Then the 26th is Carver. My apologies for that. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate the help there. For those of you that are interested in watching this again, you can just go to youtube.com/MSP webinars. Feel free to like and share the video once you are there. Also subscribe on YouTube so that way you can get updates anytime there's a webinar, even though if you may have missed it. You can go to mspwebinars.com and you can get yourself signed up to be a member of MSP Webinars, where we've got some awesome deals from IT channel vendors, documentation that's been made available, MSP roundtables, and a lot more. So, yeah, anyone that has questions, steve@mspwebinars.com, or check out the website. Thank you again, Rob. You are awesome. This tool is awesome. And if you want to check it out, just go to chocolatey.io, and you can download the open source version and start playing with it right away. Cool. You all have yourself a great day, and I will see you next week.
Have you been looking for a way to stay focused on your goals and grow your MSP? Accountability groups from RocketMSP can help. We offer weekly accountability sessions that meet online with a group of your peers. Your success begins with accountability. Go to www.rocketmsp.io to join your accountability group today.